Hi, friends. I'm Scott Giles, a life coach and a consulting hypnotist, and welcome to Saturday at 2:30. Because every Saturday at 2:30, I do a short video podcast here on Facebook Live, which I then put up on my YouTube channel with some additional material added for people who want to view it later. I always talk about some aspect of religion, the hypnotic arts and sciences, or coaching. Today, I want to talk about spirituality. Now, most people don't get that spirituality has undergone a tremendous change in recent decades. Centuries ago, spirituality was absolutely and ineluctably part of organized religion. It was inconceivable that someone could have a spiritual life that was not anchored in some organized religious faith. And that faith would be the one that would dictate what methods you could use, what books you could read, and what kind of goals you could have as part of your spiritual practice. And that was true for quite literally centuries. And if you departed from the party line in your spiritual practice, you would face all kinds of problems. Discrimination, even imprisonment or execution. So in times past, religion and spirituality were actually two parts of the same coin. But not now. That's been a huge change in religious anthropology. Sociologist Robert Bellah talks about the religion of Sheilaism in one of his books, because he was talking to a woman named Sheila, and she said, "Oh yeah, I have a religion. I take a little bit from Hinduism and a little bit from Buddhism and some Native American beliefs over here and some things about Christianity I remember from my childhood, and I sort of blend them all together into my personal, house blend, the religion of Sheilaism." And Bellah put this forward, originally saying that this is a problem because when people do this kind of very individualistic crafting of their spiritual practices and even their faith statement, they often combine things that are actually contradictory. I mean, it's really quite difficult to, for example, believe in past lives and also believe in, say, a Christian view of heaven or hell. They don't go together really well, but some people manage to put them together by simply not examining the contradictions. Now, how all of this got started goes back to actually my religious denomination. I'm a Unitarian Universalist, and on the Unitarian side of our movement, the Unitarians and Universalists merged in 1961. There was a movement called Transcendentalism in the 19th century. Probably the best known exponent of it was Ralph Waldo Emerson. He was a Unitarian minister, but a famous lecturer and essayist, very important in the American world of letters, in fact. He lived from 1893 to, 1803, I believe, to 1892. Now, the background that he and the other members of the clergy who became transcendentalists had was they were rooted in the liberal Protestantism of their day, which means they didn't believe in a lot of supernaturalistic things. They had a background in what was called the higher criticism of the Bible. This came from the universities in Germany, where they began to take the biblical texts and use techniques of linguistics and archaeology and history to kind of take them apart and to discover that there were multiple streams of editing going on, things that had been compressed or glossed over. They also were probably the first generation of Western clergy who were exposed to beliefs from the East. A famous religious scholar named Max Mueller had published the Sacred Scriptures of the East at about this time in the 19th century. And so it became possible for these people who had never been exposed to anything outside of the Old and New Testaments to read the Rig Veda, to read the Buddhist scriptures, to read the Bhagavad Gita, And this had a transformative view on their understanding of theology and religion because they were seeing something here that they had never encountered before. What the Transcendentalists did as part of their movement is they elevated intuition in the way that some contemporary mystics talk about gnosis, Gnosis, kind of, which means literally knowledge, but what's meant by that is kind of an intuitive grasp of a concept. That was their primary thing. The Transcendentalists came to believe that what your intuition powerfully told you was true about the universe and about your life was more reliable than what you might read in books. And so what happened here is that for the first time, the organized religion became detached from the notion of spirituality and spiritual practices. In fact, the Transcendentalists went a step further. Up until then, most people would say that spirituality was something in particular that you did. You prayed, you meditated, you wrote in a journal. The Transcendentalists said, yeah, but they also said being spiritual was a way of doing things that you were already doing. Washing the dishes in a mindful way, taking a walk through a forest, and appreciating the wonder of the natural world were just as spiritual for them as, say, prayer or meditation. So with this happening, the structures of organized religion kind of fell away, and people increasingly began to craft a spiritual practice for themselves that was to some degree independent of whatever organized system of theological beliefs they were raised in. Years ago, I gave a series of lectures at universities around the country called the Men's Lectures, and I was paid to do this. It's something a committee in our denomination selects one clergy member to present. And in those lectures, I talked about the difference between religion and spirituality as being similar to a cross. Now, I don't mean this in the Christian sense. I mean a horizontal surface and a vertical surface. Religion works on the horizontal plane. That is, it unites a person with other people, with other communities, a historical tradition. It unites you with other people and things about other people. Spirituality, however, works on the vertical plane. It unites you as an individual with something greater than yourself, transcendent, or something more immanent within yourself. So they're quite different. In fact, I actually argued that you could talk to someone and figure out how big their horizontal bar should be and how big their vertical bar could be, because it was clear that some people had only a religion and no spirituality. Some people were very spiritual but had no religion. Some people had a little religion and a lot of spirituality, and vice versa. In fact, I think to a large degree today, this metaphor still kind of works when you think about how a person is presenting their spiritual life. How much of their spiritual life is connected to something that is transcendent or immanent within them versus connected to other people, to historical traditions, communities of faith, and so on. Now, I would argue it's best to have both and probably in some kind of a balance, but it's clear that you can have either or none or a different mix. Because religion and spirituality have separated in our time, and it's possible for a person to coherently say, I'm spiritual but not religious, we've seen some things happen among the practice of spirituality, the people who think about it, who write books about it, who give workshops. And there are two concepts that have come out of the world of spiritual development, which I think are fantastic and don't get enough airtime. People don't know about them. The two concepts are discernment and formation. And unless you've been reading in the literature of spiritual development, you've probably not encountered these. Discernment means judging well. When you're faced with a choice you have to make, a spiritual person would say, an intentionally spiritual person or someone who's done some reading in the literature would say, I'm going to enter into a process of discernment, meaning I'm not just going to make a snap decision. I'm going to think about this. I'm going to meditate on this. I'm going to ponder this. I'm going to talk about this with people I respect. And I will gradually, over a period of time, discern what the best course is. That is, I will judge well what I should do. I will make a more measured and balanced response instead of unreflectively just doing whatever comes to mind when I first encounter something. The second concept that I think is enormously valuable out of the spiritual development literature is the concept of formation. A person who talks about their spiritual formation is talking, if they're looking at their past, they're looking at the things that helped form them into being the spiritual being that they are now. And everyone's got a unique set of stepping stones that got them to where they were. If you had a positive experience in childhood with spiritual practices, your formation's likely to have taken a very different path than if you had negative experiences during that time. But the other part of formation is from now, not just what got you here, what formed you, but what do you need to be able to evolve further? So when a person immersed in this literature or practice talks about their formation, they're talking about what shaped them in the past, but also what they believe needs to happen for them to continue to evolve in the future. Now, they won't know because none of us can foretell the future accurately. My friends with tarot cards and stuff notwithstanding. What they're saying is that I'm aware that I will change going forward. I will continue to evolve. So what experiences do I need to set myself up for that have the best chance of providing me with the input and with the surroundings that I need to be able to continue my evolution as a person? And this might be, okay, I need to find a new job. This job I have now is an ulcer farm. It's going to destroy me spiritually, and I need to go work for myself or work for a community organization or something that will nourish my spirit and improve my formation. When I decided to leave the security of a large church parish ministry for the entrepreneurial work I do now as a community minister with hypnosis, that was because I realized that I needed that in my formation to continue to grow as a spiritual person. The intense politics and even bullying that often goes on in parish life was toxic to me. And so for my own formation, I needed to have a different kind of context for myself. So in ancient of times, religion and spirituality were one thing. With the transcendentalists in the 19th century, they started to separate. Now in our time, they've separated quite significantly, and it's possible to be spiritual and not religious. And if you want to do that, that's cool. Out of the literature, though, of spiritual development, think about those two concepts: discernment, judging well, judging carefully, not hurrying into decisions, but giving yourself the opportunity to reflectively decide, and formation. Be aware of not just what got you to where you are now, but the sorts of things that you may need going forward. These two concepts, I think, will nurture a reflective and mindful life. And that is a way of being spiritual, to live reflectively and mindfully. And I commend them to you. Hey, thank you for your attention. I'll be back next Saturday at 2:30 Central Time with a different topic. I hope you'll join me. As always, if I can be of help to you, please feel free to reach out to me through my website or through email or telephone. If you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe and like the video. And if you're catching this on Facebook, please also like and share. Thank you much. Have a good one.